This is the Shit Show. Our guest, Damon Bodine.
Hey, what's up, Peter, man? How you doing today, bro?
Chilling. Damon Bodine is a homie. You know what I mean? He is also a electromagnetic person with a genius mindset and an amazing story. And here we go.
It's quite the intro, man. But I like it, bro. I like it. Awesome.
Awesome. This is filled with wax too. So throughout the entire thing, I was like,
yeah,
so you know what I mean?
I love it. Anyways,
I might put all of this in, but
hey, what's up, Peter? How are you today, man?
Great, man. Great.
Nice,
How are
man.
you?
Bro, I'm doing good, man. I'm doing good. Just kind of facing the new normal, man. Just taking it all one day at a time, right? So, yeah, man.
I'm into whatever involves not facing a new normal every 2 weeks, which seems to be 2020.
Yeah. Life is moving. Even in my best simulation that I could have possibly had of the world 5 years ago, I would have not predicted this, right? So,
yeah. We live in interesting times, as they say.
Yeah, man. So,
could you, in many or not so many words, tell everybody who you are and what you're all about?
Sure, man. My name is Damon Bodine. Live in Brooklyn, New York. Let's see. Today, I work as an entrepreneur. I run a business in real estate. Do a lot of nonprofit work as well. Previous to that, worked in the music industry for about a decade. Also did a variety of jobs there, kind of living between Buffalo and New York and a little bit of the West Coast here and there. But most of all, man, I consider myself just one of those people that's just an entrepreneur first, kind of no matter where that hat currently lands, if that makes sense, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's I feel like it's more of a tendency than like a career path.
Yeah, for sure. Something that once it's in your soul, man, it's kind of like it's kind of the most addictive drug there is, right? So
it's the essence of satisfaction. So let's see. Let's start with that. Let's start with entrepreneurship and your vision for the future, and what you think has gotten you places, and what you think you would get other people places.
Yeah, for sure, man. So kind of a bit about my story, right? Like I'm 36 now, right? I've been running businesses since I was 19. My first business was as a concert promoter in Buffalo, New York. Kind of like one of those unintentional businesses that when you start it, you don't have the end in mind. You're just sort of kind of doing it one day at a time, right? So, that started for me like I was going to University of Buffalo at the time, and just had this kind of vision to just do, like events around school and things like that or whatever. So, just try to kind of find a way to meet a lot of people quickly and, be a good servant for the community, if that, in that kind of way, right? So, that sort of became doing a lot of small venue shows at one of the neighborhood bars there, and trying to connect people at school together, trying to like kind of build my own, social network and things like that, and just keep pushing, right? But after a while, that became more of less of like a hobby and, more of like a career. Does that make sense? Like it sort of evolved kind of quickly. Like we were doing shows and they started off, like 30, 40 people on a Friday night, but within like 4 months, it was like 500 to 600 people on a Friday night, that kind of thing. Right. So it was kind of a right place, right time, right environment, right idea kind of thing. Right. And, we built that business out over time. Eventually, about 4 years after doing, 80 to 100 live events a year, I partnered my company with another local promoter in the area. We expanded out of Buffalo, New York, to Rochester, Syracuse, Erie, and parts of Canada for a time, to the point where we were doing about 280 to 300 live events a year. Did that from 2008 to about middle of 2011. At that point, after doing it for about 10 years, I had, just wanted to kind of take a different step in life and, just try some new things, because like I could probably have done that same job for the next 40 years, but, I was trying to reinvent myself from time to time. Right. So I came to Brooklyn and moved to this moved into this apartment in a hip hop recording studio and slept next to the vocal booth kind of thing. So it was a lot of not a lot of sleep, but a lot of fun quickly. So, did that for a while, man, and just and then kind of got into a couple years later, from kind of finding myself and doing a bunch of odd jobs and things like that, just find myself in the real estate business and have been at that since 2014. And it's now we have a team here. I work with my wife. We have another team member. We have a couple assistants, and it's a good life for us, man. So that's kind of the career background in terms of kind of the vision and where I'm going and things like that. To me, it's like I've always tried to take my story and show people that there's enough abundance in the world for everybody, right? Like I'm a very try to be a positive minded person, but you don't have that abundance about accountability, right? So I've always tried to kind of be an example of I guess having high standards for myself and a good moral compass for myself, and then just try to kind of put that out into the world, right? And I guess be a good leader for others, right? So yeah, so that's kind of the long and short of it.
I feel like there's this ingrained tendency in a lot of people in society that it's almost like I feel like not enough good people feel like they should be a leader.
Yeah.
Like, they feel like maybe it's like taking or like like having too much, but like it's it's really I see a big problem with how the world is being run by people who are not great.
Yeah. I mean, there's kind of a shift, you know what I mean? Like for me, like when I started booking, the venues, like when in college and stuff like that, right? I had no vision it was going to become a business or become this thing that like, people to this day, will send me like little memory caps and things like that from like 12 years ago or whatever. I think a lot of people, man, like, they don't necessarily have the, they don't have, I suppose they run their life very linearly, right? Like it's like in a very linear fashion. Like, okay, you go to school, you go to college, you do a job, you climb the ranks, you build a family, you get the house with the picket fence, you just, it is what it is, right? And to some degree, like entrepreneurship it doesn't have, in some circles of people that's like very well respected, but in other circles of people, like, it's definitely frowned upon. Like I remember, people in my family, right? Like when I stopped working my 9 to 5, like when I was like 21, right? People were like, like my aunts and stuff like that were calling me and being like, you got to really rethink this and da 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 da, and like friends and like people were just like they're very like, they have this like protectionist aspect, right? The advantage for me was I had lived on my own without my parents since I was 16, right? So I already had a lot of like experience kind of paying my own bills and like having to have like that accountability day by day. So like the shift was a little easier for me than what it was for maybe someone who does that, like, you know, goes through high school, then goes to college, accumulates a lot of debt, and now they're like, you know, they're kind of behind the rat race, right? And now it's like maybe they want to do something, right? But like they they sort of get they sort of just become very vindictive of society, right? Because unfortunately those choices did not, you know, they were probably too young to take on the amount of debt that they took on, right? Or they were probably, you know, they were trying to just do the right thing or appease their parents or family or relationships or whatever, right? And then I see a lot of people become very like spiteful because of that, right? You know, and then in our current society, there's just so many things that kind of reinforce that. And then, you know, before you know it, you just see like, you know, you see like a lot, just so much, you just see the anger overcome, you know, any sort of like entrepreneurial kind of like intentions or that someone has, right? So yeah, so that's kind of where,
you know what I mean? Sorry, I mean.
No, it's all good, man. I was gonna keep rambling on, but what I was gonna say is like for me, like the big thing that a lot of people saw as a disadvantage, but a huge advantage for me is that I was like, you know, I was out there living on my own early, right? So you had to like, so like there wasn't an option to like, you know, just not, there wasn't an option to fail, and that sort of like back against the wall kind of thing was kind of the right, I guess, you know, battery in the back that I needed to kind of like make that music thing successful, right? So
yeah, man, yeah. Like I met you, I think, about a year into your real estate endeavors.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, so it's cool to hear some of the backstory, you know.
Yeah, for sure, man. It's been a long road, bro, to say the least.
Yeah, bro.
So, yeah, so, man.
Hold on 1 second. I got notes. I'm new at this, and I feel like it's I call it the shit show, and sometimes it's a little bit of a shit show.
Bro, it's gonna be great. It's gonna be great, bro. We're just boys, man, just having a good conversation, right? So,
dude, man, that's why it's so beautiful, man. So I had to do it. Hold on 1 second. Being a leader in the community. Yeah, I mean, like you kind of touched on that, but like I want to talk to you about like your style of community leadership.
Mm-hmm. You know,
and like your perspective on that, however, you know, let's get poetic with it.
Yeah, man. I mean, look, I think it starts with having a sense of yourself first and kind of knowing who you are, right? And for me, like I have like, you know, I have 7 basic disciplines that kind of run my life, right? That I want to like put intentional like focus on like every day, right? So, you know, those are like my relationships, education, finance, fitness, work, spiritual, nutrition, right? And I figure if I can kind of build those out every day and try to kind of move the needle forward on them positively, like each day of my life with some structure, then I've at least gained, you know, some sense of like accountability that then I can turn around and try to communicate to the rest of the world, right? And in terms of being a leader in the community, right? Like I realized right away, like when we were doing concerts when I was like 20 years old, right? Like, you know, kids that were coming to these shows, right? They were coming out, like I was talking to them, I was shaking their hand and handing them flyers and like having conversations with them, man. And they're coming from some really like dark households and like some really, really, you know, tough shit that they're dealing with, right? So like for us, like, you know, having that environment for them that was kind of positive, right? Where there was like, where there was like a sense of trust amongst people that were there and things like that. That was like a huge thing, right? So, I would always be like kind of the person that was like, okay, well, Jake meet Gino or something like that, right? And just try to like kind of, try to help people build kind of a sense of community within that environment. Um, in music, you only have, like, especially in the concert world, man, you only have people there for a limited amount of time, right? And you got to make the most of it, right? So that's kind of how it started there. It also, it's evolved a lot for me too, man. Like I'm sure obviously, like I'm a cancer survivor, right? So doing chemotherapy and kind of having to go through that regimented like schedule every day, right? And face that, that challenge, right? I wanted to always show people after that it's not like a death sentence, right? That you can go through some real tragedy or real challenging circumstances rather, and you can kind of like use that as your fuel, and like I think that's something like as I've gotten older in life, right? Like I've always tried to kind of like when I'm talking to people, I'm like, yo, this awful thing happened to you, but you can use that as like you can use that as your gas to get you to whatever next kind of level you want to get to, right? So, that I think that along with kind of building the trust of people, right? And then and now kind of going into real estate, right? For me, like, it can be a dark industry at times, right? There's a lot of really, really bad shit that happens in the real estate world, right? But there's a lot of good shit that happens in the real estate world, right? For a lot of people, like they're not going to have 401ks. They're not going to have like crazy knowledge of like the stock markets and things like that, right? And they're not going to have a windfall of money coming from their parents or what have you, right? So if they look at real estate the right way, this might be the one driver that actually helps them, create, I guess, a retirement for themselves or, financial security and things like that, right? So I've tried to always tell people, I'm like, look, this could be your vehicle, like it's all, be an honest person, be an honest dealer, right? Like be a good person, like understand what you're getting into, try to treat people well, like follow the golden rule, all that. But like, this is something where like any of us can literally, put ourselves into like that next gear, like if you're building equity, man, you're doing that kind of month by month, day by day, like that pays dividends for you long down the road. So I'm trying to kind of get people now to see the long game, right? Like I'm starting to see the long game more in my life now than I was, maybe even like 5-10 years ago, and that's been a huge shift over the last like few years for sure.
Facts.
Yeah.
I forget about the long game easily.
It's hard, man, like the world is moving so fast right now, bro. Like people are dealing with so much, right? It's just
are we preparing for it?
Yeah, I mean, it's just kind of like it's so easy, but that I don't think that things are the media environment now, the news cycle, all that's sped up a lot, right? But we've been dealing with tough shit in the world as long as I've been like, a human being, right? Like, my family was growing up in like Section 8 and stuff like that, right? And like, you walk down the street and people have like fucking needles in their arms and shit like that, right? Like everyone's got something that's happening on either a personal level or a bigger society level and things like that, right? And you just sort of have to learn how to prioritize things, right? That's why I kind of have those like, those 7 centers to kind of guide me like day by day, right? So I can kind of, if I get through all those and I put intentional effort into each of them, man, then like the rest of my day is usually pretty productive and good.
Hell yeah, man. That's what's up. Hell yeah, bro. Hold on 1 second. I'm gonna. So yeah, I asked you for things to talk about, and you gave me some. Like, I couldn't even change the wording because it was like I was like, that's perfect. So I'm gonna say it just like you said it. Finding balance and kindness,
Yeah.
difficult times.
Yeah, I mean, I look at it like this, right? Like people, there's this phrase kind of going around amongst a lot of people I listen to, right? Like you got to put on your own mask first, right? Like you got to make sure that you're like kind of center in your core. You got to try to be intentional about that and kind of trying to find balance within yourself, right? Because then, you're a better steward of the world, right? Like you won't, I feel like when people are uneasy, right, and nervous and scared, they start acting really irrationally, right? And it's just not, that's not doing any favors for you, and it's certainly not doing any favors for the people that you encounter, right? Like, no one is gonna like, no one's gonna change my opinion by like sending me an all caps tweet on Twitter or telling me how awful of a person I am, right? Like it's, or something like that, right?
Yeah.
We just have to kind of we have to kind of put on our own mask first, right? And be focused. So from a balance perspective, man, like for me, like I try to like do some things, like I try to wake up at the same time every day. I try to manage like I try to meditate every day, of course. I write every day, I read every day, I work, I do exercise every day, right? I manage what I eat every day. But I also like manage my consumption, right? Like I don't like I have like social media limits, you know what I mean? Like to the point where I'm like, you know what, this is not going to help me right now, right? To read like another 25 articles on the same depressing thing that like I'm already aware of after reading article number 1, right? Like I got to get outside of the echo chamber from time to time, So it's important to like I have a book, a notebook where I like whenever I have something like a really like positive memory, I try to chronicle it that there, right? And if I'm ever like feeling down or whatever, like I go back to that book, and it's usually like it's kind of a clear all for whatever is going bad in my current world, right? So there's that. Yeah. What was the second? I heard balance. What was the second half of that?
Kindness.
Kindness. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, that's a big one right now, man. I think, it. I've been beta testing my social media for like 10 years now, right? Like just putting things out into the world to kind of see what people react to, right? And I think that people tend to react to negativity just at a much more visceral level. Like I could post like something on my Facebook and say like, hey, I hope you guys have a great day. And like the engagement of that will be like 3 people, right? Or I could post like, TMZ says blah, 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 blah. And the engagement will be like 80 people, And I think it exposes kind of a flaw in human beings, right? That we sort of gravitate towards the negative sometimes, right? Because maybe it's like a coping mechanism for people.
Yeah.
So I try to kind of be the counter to that.
You're never disappointed.
Yeah, I mean, so I just try to be the counter to that, man. And I just try to lead with like positivity, right? Because like I could disagree with you on everything, right? But you're still a human being, right? And we still share, we're still shepherds of the same earth and the same air, right? So it's like we can find common balance, and like I'm seeing a lot, man, like especially like, not to kind of dive into it too much, but like politics, man, like people, I'm seeing a lot of just like mutiny and anger and people melting down, like making like these candidates into like messiahs and things like that, right? And I'm like,
Woo!
bro, it's just like just calm down for a second. Like
even like the conspiracy theorist thing, it's like based on a context of worship to these like omnipotent obstacles to like why like you don't have something or you want, you know what I mean? I feel like it's like a distraction from that, man. It drives me crazy. It's like on both sides of it, it's like nuts.
people have to chill on that stuff, man. It's just like I'm reading like, like I have a pretty strong, like, I have a pretty thick skin, right? Like I've been dealing with shit for a long time, right? But I'm like, like I just had like a friend yesterday, right? Like an old coworker of me, like die from the coronavirus, right? And then literally like I jumped on Facebook and people are talking about 5G, or something like that, like some bullshit like that.
Kind of just like straight up disrespecting the dead at this point.
Yeah, and I'm just like, yo, like you guys, like just think about your audience. Like you don't know what people are going through, right? Like you don't know, like there's like there's a lot of ammo in your post into like what you put out into the world and the kind of conversations that you have that you don't realize, right? And I had to learn this like a lot of times, right? Because I was really, really dumb about this when I was in like my early 20s, right? Like I would just be like,
Me
I
too,
would,
like later than that. Like,
yeah, I would just be like, da, 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 talking so loud and da da da. And I'm just like, and then I have like one-on-one conversations with people later, and they're like, I really didn't appreciate that. And I'm like, you know what, you're right. I was being an asshole, right? So
then it's like, oh, like now we're having this conversation, It's
yeah. So, I mean, the good thing is like
I still
people,
have a lot to learn about that shit, to be honest.
they'll give you, I appreciate those conversations so much, right? Because like I think everything's a learning lesson, but I think that we could all kind of just lead with a little more kindness in the world, right? Because like I don't think human beings are built for the environment that we're in right now, right? With this like hyper local echo chamber algorithm news cycle, right? And it's just like, and I think that a lot of times people feel very isolated, and mental health, as we all know, is a real challenging thing for a lot of people right now, and it's one of those kind of silent things that you don't see. So we could all do a little better to just be like, good shepherds of the space, right?
Yeah. Shepherds in space. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Oh, it's all good. I just said shepherds of the space, right? Whether or not, you're like sitting in an office of people, or you're sitting on Twitter, or you're sitting in like a party, or whatever the environment is, right? It's just like, just think about the receiver a little bit, right? Like before you just like go off the rails, like.
No, for real. Like I need to learn. I feel like in myself, the tendency to like basically do anything that I know is gonna hurt another person, like needlessly. Like if somebody isn't attacking you, because the thing is, like words, it's like shit is not gonna hurt you. So you could basically say anything to me, and really nothing's gonna happen, right? So it's like, all right, so then I'm gonna retaliate and escalate and take away from my own time, energy, everything else, as well as like basically just like needlessly inflict pain on this other person. And I feel like the social media like made people I feel like people used to know that more. Like I really do. But it's like when you're behind this thing, we all know that's true, but it's wild, man.
Yeah.
I heard someone say that the smartphone has changed the way the human brain works more than anything except for fire.
Yeah.
Like, it's just like, man, like that's intense.
Yeah, just kind of the final point on this, man. Like, like when I was going through chemo, right? I met people in kind of the wing of the hospital. I used to like introduce myself to other like patients around me and kind of talk with them and like, give them my phone number in case they just needed like to talk, right? And like the thing that I noticed beyond like all kind of the medical, the medical aspect of things, right? The people that had a good positive outlook generally had better outcomes, right? So to me, it's like, you got to think about the immunity in other people, right? And like, what kind of effect are you having on someone's immunity, right? Because when people are afraid, man, or they're like depressed or whatever, like their immune system is shot, right? And they're more susceptible to sickness, they're more susceptible to just like self-destructive behavior, like a lot of that, right? So, that's kind of where my, like I think that like we all have to kind of think about what, you know, what our moral compass is, right? And like we, you know, I still, like I say this to you, like as a person is still working on it every day, right? It's like no one's infallible, right? I still say a lot of stupid shit, right? But you know, I try to be a little bit more. I try to have a self editor now that I didn't have maybe like 10 years ago, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, man. So that, you know, so that kind of kindness, and then just like I don't know, man. Like just seeing people like in true, like as much true equality as possible, right? Like I feel like we're at a very like, you know, where there's like class warfare point in society, and like everyone is just so at each other's throats all the time, right? And I'm like, man, like I've met people from all walks of life, man. Like I've met good people and assholes in all of the, you know, in any like whatever, however you want to define, you know, however you want to, whatever categories you want to divide people into. Like I've met the extremes of both, right? So it's just, you know, can we have a little bit more like just heart for people, you know? And so that's kind of that for me, man. So.
I hear you, man. I hear you. Yeah, man. It's a constant process. It could be said it's why we're here, man. It's like it's easy to think you're a good person.
You know, we got to work on it, man. Like it's all part of accountability, right? Like I think that's the thing, right? Like if you don't, it's just like if I walked around every day like I was infallible, right? And I didn't like try to say, okay, like I try to like take notes on my day, right? And I'm like, okay, this is something I did well. This is something I could work on. This is something like, you know, maybe I unintentionally made this person feel this way or whatever, right? Maybe, you know, my post or the way that I like did something, you know, I just try to like, I try to reflect a lot, man, you know, and a lot of like self-reflection on everything, you know? So it's,
Oh, yeah, man.
yes, so that's that, you know, I mean, listen, like, we talk about that for an hour, but you know, that for me, man, it's just always something like that's kind of the moral compass that I live by, right? Like I try to not be judgmental as much as possible.
So
And, you know, I try to be like a good shepherd of the space in the world, right? So
absolutely. I really like that term.
yeah,
Shepherd.
yeah, man. Well, thank you, man. Thank you. So yeah, man. So that's kind of you know, in terms of like you asked me earlier in the conversation about kind of the future a little bit and like where kind of I see things going, right? Like this is this is definitely kind of an inflection point in society, you know? It like I think that especially if everything we're dealing with now, this is kind of one of those it's definitely a first in a generation kind of situation, right? And I think that I'm not gonna make any judgments on like, you know, any government's response to this or anything like that. Like that stuff to me is like, what are you gonna do, right? Like I'm not, you
Oh,
know,
fuck.
but
Yeah.
what I can say is, you know, from a abundance mindset, I could say this could be the opportunity for people to be a little to humanize people a little bit, right? And that people could see each other as equals a little more, right? Um, I think it's going to have some real effects, you know, on the economy and, you know, industry and things like that. Like I was walking around my neighborhood yesterday and I already saw, you know, 10, I was marking them down as I was walking like existing restaurants and businesses that were open before this and already have like the for lease sign or something like that, right? So those people are not coming back, right? So you're gonna have like a shift there, and I think like on a grander scale, you're gonna have a bit of a shift in corporate America. Like this is kind of that thing that's going to drive a lot of automation, and it's gonna drive a lot of, unfortunately, a lot of these people right now that are unemployed or what have you, like they're not like these jobs aren't coming back. So people they need to get real right now and say like, okay, well, what am I going to do to push, what am I going to do to reskill myself, or what am I going to do to like make sure that I have a place in whatever the new economy is, So I think I've been trying to tell people that. I've been like, look, like use this time and like educate yourself, like build, like get out of your echo chamber, right? Like stay off of fucking Twitter for a day, right? Just like, be in it, because if no one's coming to save you, right? Like it's just not, it's just like no one's coming to save you. So be ready to meet the moment as it comes, right? So
Facts, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah, man.
But that as far as my future, like, I think that it's open. I don't think I'll be in this career forever. I like to think that life is long, right? And there's a lot of different things you can do with the time that you have here, right? So, I'm kind of looking at that for myself right now, right? As like like an inflection point, meaning like, like, do I come out of this and just go back to business as usual, or do I try to like shake the deck up a little bit and like do some different things, And is this that moment where maybe I've gotten a little too comfortable doing what I'm doing and the creative part of my brain has suffered because of it, right? Or what have you, So it's a good time. It's a good time to do a lot of thinking, So
Dude, facts, man. Yeah. It's wild, man. When I came out to this property for 10 days, I wasn't able to, there's other people on the property, but they didn't, we didn't want to get in within 20 feet of each other just in case. And so it was 10 days, no human contact for me.
Man.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah. I'll tell you, man, I have a very like extrovert personality, right? So like for me, like,
damn.
I'm kind of losing my mind right now with this stuff, right? But I've been doing like, I've been calling people, doing like the Zoom calls and the Skypes and all that stuff, and like really being like trying to be the one who reaches out first with a lot of people, right? And even people I haven't talked to in like a really long time, right? Because, right now, like, we don't know, man, like, this is kind of, not to quote Trump, but this is like the invisible enemy, right? So you don't know who's dealing with it, or who knows somebody that's dealing with it, or what that means to like, them, not even if they're sick, but they're economically sick or what have you, right, from the situation. So right now I'm just trying to like be real intentional about, being in people's lives, right? And also not taking it personally if they don't respond to it, right?
Yeah,
facts. It's a lot of people I'm reaching out to right now that I'm like, sending like these heartfelt like videos to, right? And I'm just like left on red or something like that. And I'm like, it's cool. Like I get it. Like, this is a lot. I think a lot of people right now, like they're having a really hard time like dealing with like the days, like I talk to a lot of people, man, they don't even know what day of the week it is, right? Like that kind of thing, right? So
which can be nice.
Yeah, no, for sure. Like you got, just like you said, like 10 days no human contact, right? Like I'm sure for you, like that sounds like a paradise, right?
No, I mean, like it was hard, but it was like I got the first 2 days I was here, it snowed, and there's no heat in this cabin. So I just put on all my clothes, and I'm used to this kind of shit, I put on all my clothes and stayed in my sleeping bag all day. Basically just meditated all day. And but I was like, shit, man, if I do have this shit, I'm dying of pneumonia. Like so that was terrifying. And then fucking but like, it like now I'm back, I'm able to be around them, and it feels triumphant, and it feels if I let go of a lot of shit, man.
Yeah, that's good, man. That's good, bro. Like people need to have that prescription, to kind of like deal with whatever demons, like that's been a big thing. Like I've tried to work on like in the last couple of years, you know, just like exercising like any demons I had like from my past or like family or anything like that, or like just like reaching out to people that I had like petty arguments with or something like that over the years and just like kind of rekindling that, right? Um, this has actually been a really good time to do that right now, right? Because
Gotta get,
it's, yeah, it's just, you can't have that in your soul, man. But like, kind of just like, you know, thinking about like moving forward, man, and like where things go, right? Like, I think that we've got to like, I think that people just have to think a little bit pragmatically, you know, like you can't be so stuck in idealism that you don't participate in reality, right? And, you know, that's something I think people, they're so disappointed right now when something like doesn't happen for them, right? And it's like such a letdown that sometimes they don't even like try, you know? And I guess like being an entrepreneur for me for to age myself 18 years now has you know, has just taught me that the best thing you can do is just try, you know, just roll the dice, like make it happen, like take your shot, you know, like
yeah. If one thing's not working, that doesn't mean another thing's not gonna work. Just like,
yeah, it doesn't mean that you're not a valuable person, you know what I mean? Like, dude,
facts.
I failed, bro. Like my graveyard of failed business ideas, bro, is like bigger than like the entire city of New York, right? So it's just you know, if anyone, I guess, listens to this, you know, to this call, it's just like you'll take the shot, make it happen, because you'll recover. Like things will be all right, you know, like you'll find a way. So
Yeah, like, you know, it's like the cycle of the season sometimes, man. Like you can see like where shit got confusing, and then something threw you off the wheel, man.
yeah,
And that
dude.
triumph happens, you know. Like, man, when I met Deuce and when I met you, that whole year was major because I went to New York and just was like, fuck it, I got enough coming in to pay for like a hostel bed.
Yeah,
It was like that's just where I needed to be. It was like,
that's huge, man, and you did it, man. You know, and that's like that changed the trajectory of probably everything moving forward for you, right? Like just changing the environment, you know. So
yeah, you know,
be a very interesting time in the world to see how people change their environment right now, right? Because God knows, like being stuck in those four walls every day, right, is probably making people put a lot of like active mind thought to like what they're trying to do next, you know. So
straight up,
yeah,
you know, or just
yeah.
I feel like we're gonna have a rise of budding gardening enthusiasts.
Dude, hallelujah, right? You know, better that than like oil enthusiasts or something, right? You know, but like
Straight up,
it's
create oxygen and eat it. Like, please.
yeah, there you go, man. Yeah, it's just, you know, it's one day at a time, right? But like I don't know, man. Like right now, like I'm trying to like be intentional about like I'm trying not to be like, yo, I'm just gonna binge on Netflix for 10 hours today or something like that, right? I try to really write out like I have this thing called the intention journal, right? That I sort of write out my plan every single day on, right? And it takes like literally 5 minutes a day, right? And the days that I do that are so much better than the days that I don't, you know? Uh, so yeah, so one other kind of piece of the puzzle, I guess, right, or something. But
Absolutely. That's a major one. That's a fundamental one.
yeah,
It's like,
yeah, get it out of your brain and onto the paper, right? Because like
always, because then that's one step to reality.
yeah, it's one step to reality, and it's one step to having a clear head too, right? Because
Facts.
like like people like I meet people all the time, right? I go to like a lot of like entrepreneurship startup meetups and stuff like that, right? And I meet people that I'm like, you know, they'll be like, yeah, man, I've got this idea, da 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 da. I've been talking, you know, I've been And I'm like, okay, so like, what's your process? Like, what have you done? And they're like, well, I started thinking about it in like 2016. And I'm like, all right, that's cool. But okay, so what's next? What's next? What's next? Let's break out like a schedule of like how you're going to try to execute this idea or what action steps you're trying to get there, And I think that more now than ever, like, you got to try to move the ball forward just a little bit every single day. Just a little bit every single day, right? Like, if there's something you want to do, like if you're like going to record a new album or something like that, right? Like, it's probably better that you do a little bit of work every day as opposed to trying to do like 20 hours of work in one day, right? Or something like that,
You have these like weird rhyme patterns that like are half thought out and like everything, man. People really do it like that. It's crazy.
Oh, dude, I told you, man, my first apartment in New York, I used to sleep next to the vocal booth, right? So like sometimes sometimes I would like get out of the room and I'd come into the studio of the dudes. I'd be like, yo, guys, listen, like you should, should try to help them like chop up their 16s or whatever, right? And like, that kind of stuff. But it's at the same token, I try to say that in like an encouraging way and not like a belittling kind of way, right? Because it's really easy to hear something like that from someone and be like, yeah, I didn't ask you for this coaching, bro. You know what I mean? Like that kind of shit, So I think it's important that if you are sort of like if you're one of those A-type personalities like I am though too, it's important that people like myself don't over drill people, right? Because that just sort of there's a point when people just turn off, they don't want to hear any of it, right? So I'm trying another kind of thing. I'm a lifelong kind of quest to not be, so abrasive, so.
Facts. Yeah, man. Yeah, like, shit. No, I know what you're saying, especially when you're like hearing people and you're not hearing the beat, but like sometimes you can just tell, like, yeah.
I mean, it's cool, bro. Like sometimes, like, I remember, like, I was gonna start, like, my big plan was I was gonna be like one of the first online bloggers, right? When I was like coming out of high school, right? And I had my college major as journalism, and like I was in every single day just doing it, right? But then, it just imploded, right? Like I just realized after 6 months, I was like, this isn't my thing, right? But it's I guess what I'm getting at is sometimes like even if you might think something is your path, but it's actually not, it's still better that you push it forward with it to learn that, right? So get it out of your head and get it into the world, right? One way or the other, so.
Yeah, man.
So yeah.
Paths are so unique. Paths are many paths.
Yeah.
Like that's oh man. Feeling like that now, like going from New York City to like all I can hear is animals.
Yeah. It's comforting. Sometimes it's comforting, right? I was just in the woods a few days ago, man. It's nice to just hear birds and crickets and all that stuff, right? And maybe not cars and sirens and all that, so.
Facts, man. Well, I mean, like that's a beautiful wilderness too, man. And it's like that's the thing. I'll come out to places like this, and I'm just like, oh, this is so nice. And then I'll go to the city, and I'll be like, oh, this is so nice.
Yeah.
Like it's just like a different kind of wilderness. Like I feel like some people are not like socialized enough to understand that about cities.
Yeah. For sure. I mean, a lot of people, man, are overwhelmed by cities, like I remember like when I moved to New York, right? Like I thought it was like the greatest thing in the entire world, right? So then I would like call my friends and be like, yo, you got to come to New York. And they'd be like, oh yeah, man, I'll get back to you. And I realized that I was really pissing them off because they had zero interest whatsoever. Like,
Right.
The overwhelm of like something like this was just like, And they're like, motherfucker, this guy keeps asking, he just keeps pushing you to do this. And,
like mad annoyed the whole time, and it's like, what you really just want to order food and stay at my apartment? Like, fuck you. Like, I got you here.
yeah, man. Yeah, it's wild, man. But one day at a time, right? One day at a time, you know?
Yeah, no. Like, I feel like, I mean, New York's intense. Cities are intense. You know what I mean? But like, man, it's beautiful. And there's just like so much to do. But I guess everybody has a different path, man.
Yeah, you know, I've learned that, man. I've learned that not everyone is going to share the same outlook that I have, you know. It took me a long time to learn that, man. I was really disappointed when some of my friends didn't want to move to New York, man, after I discovered it was the greatest place in the world, right? But it's my
based on what they say they want to do, right?
yeah.
And it's like, oh well, but do you really want it? Like,
Yeah. Well, you know, man, some people are just happy, man, like living on a farm, bro, and that's it. Like they're good of that forever, you know?
totally am. I can't be in one place. That's my thing. I'm an electron. I have to move around like weekly, and
Yeah.
like I have to build my life based on that, because like if not, I'll just get bored and I'll like run off the rails.
Right. Me too. Yeah.
So what's next for you, if you care to answer that question?
Man, well, it's kind of up in the air right now, you know. For once in my life, I don't have like a 3, 6, 12-month plan. You know, I did have that at the beginning of the year, right? Like I have my 2020 planner is you know, versus what we're doing now is just like an entirely different, you know, I might as well just burn that book, right? But that's okay though. Like as far as the next steps for me, man, like I'm gonna try to, you know, while we're in this kind of quarantine now, right? I've been trying to be a good, like, you know, I've been trying to put my energy in the right places, you know, like I've been interviewing like a lot of local business owners just to like kind of talk to them about like what they're going through and kind of how people can help them, right? Like small businesses. You know, I've been doing a lot of like kind of mastermind sessions with different people, just like, you know, chopping it up with them and like, you know, just being kind of a sounding board for them, right? For me, like, I don't know. I mean, like, it looks like we're going to be in this situation with a stay at home for at least like another month, maybe 2, 3, you know, we'll see. It's, you know, anyone's guess right now, right? But I think that, you know, I'm trying to take like time to kind of reskill myself a little bit, right? Like I've been, you know, I'm a huge like iTunes U person, right? So I'm like on those courses all the time and like, you know, trying to
About that.
iTunes U is great, man. It's just like they offer a bunch of like they offer like a lot of colleges that have like free courses like Stanford and Yale and stuff like that, right? And yeah, it's great and they're free. Like you can just take it and it's like you'll learn like, you know, principles of like, you know, engineering or something like that, right? Or something. And it's been huge for me. So I'm just like taking this time to like learn some things that I don't know anything about, right? Like I'm in a physics class right now. I'm in a coding class right now. I'm just trying to kind of challenge my mind, right? And like I believe that the more that I do that, the more that it's going to open the doors for what's the next kind of path in life, right? Because it may not be, you know, having this big like real estate team for the next 10 years, right? Maybe that's done, you know, you never know, right? But you know, I'm cool with that if it is, right? I've gotten my run of it, right? And but I think that I guess the big goal for me is just to make sure that whatever I'm doing, I can still kind of be a leader, right? And I can still live life of accountability, and I can still try to model, a positive behavior, right, for people, right? Like I'm not going to become like a payday lender or something like that, right? Like, I'm it's just not my dig, right? So,
Facts.
um, so yeah, so that's kind of that.
Oh yeah, man. That's
Yeah,
what's up.
yeah, yeah, man. One day at a time, my friend. My new motto for the world right now.
That is a great one. That is a great one.
Simple, you
That is,
know.
man.
Yeah,
That is like a great priority, man, for any kind of boredom.
yeah,
Any kind of slack time could always be more meditation.
yeah, dude. I've been doing like, like one thing about me, right? Like I can't read fiction, right? Like
Dang,
I suck at reading fiction, right?
for real. Yes.
I can read like, autobiographies and like I can read like nonfiction books like there's no tomorrow, right? But
Even Paul.
you give me, yeah, even, yeah, but you give me like a sci-fi book or something like that, and I turn into so I'm challenging myself now to try to get through like a book a friend gave to me recently, right? And doing a lot of like book trades and stuff like that, and you know, just trying to keep the mind exercised, right? Because like if there's one thing that's worked out for me well in life, man, it's doing that, right? It's just trying to be like moving forward on something, right? So,
Max, man.
you know,
Real.
and the other, the another thing, like I've been telling people, right? Like, my more entrepreneurial minded friends, I'm like, like look at like Uber and Lyft and Airbnb and all those companies. They all came out of the ashes of like the financial crash of like 2008, right?
That's
So
amazing to think about. Yeah.
yeah, you better bet that like and I'm not saying those companies are like the model of like, an amazing company or anything, but I'm saying like they've changed the world, right? So
They were the people who took the opportunities.
yeah, dude, and like now, like the Great Depression, like they invented like the Fender guitar and stuff like that, right?
Wow.
These moments like they they force people to become more creative, and I'm not naturally like a super creative person, but the way that I get to creativity in my brain is just like constantly pushing myself into different areas that I'm not like uncomfortable situations that I'm not used to, right? So yeah,
Yeah.
that's kind
Happens
of
to be good for me in unfortunate times. Like anytime, even in personal tragedy, it's always when I'm walking down the street and I'll meet somebody. I don't even know what's going to happen. And then, like, a year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years down the road, like that'll just become something amazing. You know what I mean?
yeah,
And like when you really look at like the patterns of life, man, like that even just goes into the cycles of life and death. You know what I mean? And like, you know, I I really, I've been thinking about that shit a lot right now, man.
yeah, for sure, bro, for sure. You know, it's a good time to create more experiences, right? Because every one of those experiences that you create, you never know what it's going to become, right? So,
Facts, man. I'm gonna build a cabin out of free pallets.
boom, right?
How that just to make sure I know I can.
Dude, I will be excited to see that cabin, my friend.
Oh man, I'm gonna get it like like up to code. Even if nobody inspects it, I doubt I'll even have that. But I'll make sure it's something cozy, man.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So that's it, man. I guess that's kind of my life in a nutshell right now. So
Well,
we covered a lot today, bro.
yeah, man. Like it's been great, man.
Yeah,
Like this is like because it's like I don't know. I feel like conversations are beautiful, man. You know,
yeah.
That's what started fascinating me about the podcast thing.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, had to do it.
Definitely, man. Well, I appreciate you, bro. It's good to chat with you, man. It very much is.
Dude, infinite respect. And I'll be in New York like at some point as soon as this is over, pretty much. You know,
Awesome.
I left around September just because like I'm, trying to like establish my like basically just expand right now. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I pivot. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So now it's established, and now I can like kind of be more present everywhere. It's a good time.
Dude, that's beautiful, man. Well, we'll all be excited for your return, man, whenever it comes. But
You know where I'll be at.
there it is, man. Shit. And yeah, man. Hopefully we come out of the situation sooner than later, and we get back to some sense of normalcy in the world here. And I'm just hoping, man, on my end that like, you know, we all take this as a learning lesson, and we come out of it as with a little more unity and a little more humanity, and we come out of it with a little more abundance, and we just treat each other a little better, man, right? So
Yeah,
guess
man.
I guess that's that. So
That is the ultimate resolution.
yeah. Word.
This is the shit show. Could you tell anybody? Do you care to tell the audience where to find you?
Oh, bro, you just email me, man. That's probably the easiest way. Um, I'm not gonna push any business right now, but I would just say if you want to talk about anything, you know, real estate mindset, something you're going through, anything, just send me an email. It's just my first and last name, Damon, Damon, Bodine, Bodine, gmail.com.
Cool.
That's that.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So
Peter, man, I really appreciate you, bro, and I'll be looking forward to chopping it up with you once we get to the same city again, man.
yeah, bro. Yeah, bro. You know it.
Awesome.
And cool.
Awesome, man. All right, man. Well, that's it, man. We'll be well.
You as well, bro.